Hello and welcome to another modern gameplay video by Ready Made Gaming. Today we have Joe piloting blue-green Infect, going up against myself on blue-white SharkBlade. Joe's on the play. He starts with a Field of Ruin, Flooded Strand, Polluted Delta, Glacial Fortress, Island, Plains, and a Path to Exile. I will be on the draw, and my opening hand consists of a Spell Pierce, a Might of Old Grosso, Blossoming Defense, Blighted Agent, Waterlogged Grove, Windswept Heath, and a Snow-Covered Forest. Joe will lead off on a Polluted Delta and pass the turn. I'm not sure Joe's hand was a snap keep at 7. May have been able to afford to go down to 6. Having one form of interaction for creatures is a little soft, but having the Field of Ruin to fight over Inkmoth Nexus is not nothing. I will encroach upon his space with my my Waterlogged Grove, which is my play for the turn. Pass back to Joe, and my end step, Joe will crack the Polluted Delta to fetch up a tapped Hallowed Fountain. Some discussion going on about the mana base here. Joe will untap, upkeep, and draw for his turn. We'll play a Flooded Strand. As in previous videos, you will see some pauses, some timing or sequencing thought being given to the Infect on the Infect side, because it's very important. It's crucial. It's a combo deck that plays creatures and attacks with them, so everything needs to be played in a pretty much perfect sequence here. And I think Joe should end step Path to Exile the Blighted Agent. He can bring in his lands untapped during his own turn if he wants. But end step, sacrificing Flooded Strand to get a Hallowed Fountain is fine. But I think when the Infect player is tapped out, it's not a bad time to fight over the creature, especially with something like Path that doesn't do damage. So it's not like he could, tutor up a Steam Vents here and play, I don't know, a lightning bolt and get blown out by a mutagenic growth or 2 or whatever that sequencing would be. You can't get, if he end step gut shots and I'm mutagenic growth, it's not a good feeling. But I think the end step was a good time to activate Path to Exile, to use that Path to Exile. So I'll draw for my third turn, play a Windswept Heath, tap my Snow-Covered Forest for a scale up, tap my things in different directions, and try to get in for 6 Infect here. I also think that may have been a good time to Path in response to the scale up, try to neutralize the card advantage that's given up by Path getting a basic. But if Joe used that Path while I was tapped out, I wouldn't have any threat on the battlefield now. Maybe I could fetch up Dryad Arbor and start getting in, but the Field of Ruin covers that as well. So he plays the Field of Ruin, passes the turn. He's in a very dangerous spot here. He gets blown out by Vines of Vastwood, Blossoming Defense, Apostle's Blessing. Looks like he's got 2 forms of interaction with a Petty Theft, Brazen Borrow in his hand, and a Path to Exile. So we need 2 layers of protection here. So generally, if I'm playing a deck against a deck that's threat light, or if I'm against Infect, I don't mind holding my fetch lands until my turn to see exactly what I want. Also, in decks that contain the card Groundswell, it's not a bad idea to leave your fetch lands untapped, especially going into your turn. And the fact that my life total functionally doesn't matter here is important. I know it's a Stoneblade deck that it has threats and it has more ways to attack my life total than like a standard, maybe not standard, but a typical blue-white control shell with Terminus or something would. So there's the Blighted Agent attack after casting Noble Hierarch and playing another Windswept Heath. I don't know that was the correct time to play the path. So I'll respond with Blossoming Defense. Joe will respond with Petty Theft, targeting the Blighted Agent. I will Spell Pierce the Petty Theft. So Spell Pierce counters the Petty Theft, and Blossoming Defense takes care of the Path to Exile. We're talking about the sequencing and something that he could have done there, one way or the other. I think the game's very, very different if he paths the turn that I play the Blighted Agent. And there are some good cards. So here's the sideboard. Joe's going to bring out 2 Snapcaster Mages and 3 Cryptic Commands for 3 Aether Gust, a Supreme Verdict, and a Deafening Silence. I have a transformational sideboard, kind of. It has lots of cards from 2020 and 2019 in it. So I'm going to cut 2 Might of Old Crow, so 2 Scale Up, 3 Groundswell, and a Dryad Arbor for 2 Teferi Time Raveler, 3 Veil of Summer, and 3 Uro. Titan of Nature's Wrath. I generally like Teferi against control matchups. So game 2, Joe's going to be on the play with a hand of Batterskull, 2 Ops, Force of Negation, Polluted Delta, Plains, and a Field of Ruin. I will be on the draw with an Uro, Forest, Pendlehaven, Waterlogged Grove, Mutagenic Growth, and a Blossoming Defense. There's also a Teferi in my hand. That will be my mulligan to the bottom. My first draw step is an excellent one. It is a Glistener Elf. So I'll lead on Snow-Covered Forest and play the Glistener Elf. So I like bringing in the Uro and the Teferis and the Veils in matchups where I think, either that I know counterspells exist, or I'm predicting Aether Gust will come in, or maybe there's things that happen at instant speed just in a general sense coming from the opposition. And Uro is just tremendous in these matchups. I don't know if the transformational sideboard is correct here, but generally when I have the shiny button, I want to push the shiny button. So in the end step, Joe will crack his Polluted Delta for an untapped Hallowed Fountains, play Opt, scry to the top, draw, go to his turn, untap, upkeep, draw for turn, play a Plains, play a Stoneforge Mystic to get a Sword of Feast and Famine and pass the turn. I will play a Pendlehaven, tap my Forest to cast a Noble Hierarch, declare an attack with Glistener Elf, triggering my Noble Hierarch in response to the Exalted trigger. I will activate Pendlehaven to give it +1/+2. Joe will declare no blocks, and I will Mutagenic Growth my Glistener Elf. I think that was probably a mistake. I make a lot of mistakes with Mutagenic Growth. Again, shiny free button. I generally just push it too frequently, too early, too often, whatever. For Joe's third turn, he will draw and play a Field of Ruin. There's a Batterskull in his hand. I was actually questioning this keep because Batterskull just looked like a mulligan, but it looks like one of his early draw steps and was just about as good as my first draw step. For my first draw step, my deck produced a Glistener Elf, and for one of Joe's early draw steps or cantrip draws, his deck produced a Stoneforge Mystic to make that Batterskull live. So Batterskull's a bit of a beating here. Hulk 2099 smash, you know? So here's an attack with the Elf. Joe's going to go to blocks with the Germ token. I'm going to consider using a pump spell here. I'd much rather have the Mutagenic Growth now. Oh, that's brutal, getting blown out by the Force of Negation. Okay, so I'll Blossoming Defense to make my Elf big enough. Joe will respond with Force of Negation, exiling a Mana Leak. I will respond with Finds a Vastwood Kicked. Joe will respond with Opt, scrying to the top, drawing, and then he will cast a second Force of Negation. That was a crazy sequence. So I believe we both have one card in hand. His Germ is an 0/1. Here comes a Field of Ruin from Joe. So yeah, that was an excellent sequence. That was multiple counter spells, multiple Force of Wills, basically, to protect a Batterskull. Joe gained 4 life last turn off of the Batterskull connecting. So we might be moving into the Uro plan here. Yeah, make an Uro. Generally, I like tapping the Noble Hierarch, but here I don't mind having it as a blocker in case a Sword of Fire and Ice comes down. I know that there's a Feast and Famine there, but I think I'd rather get hit with Feast and Famine. Maybe fuel the old Uro there. I'll draw and pass. Gain the life back. This game is really developing nicely. You really should note the -1/-1 counters on that germ. So now it's a 2/3, or no, I guess it's a 3/3 with lifelink. Oh, here we go. This is an interesting play. I'll tap the Noble Hierarch. I don't think I can play Distortion Strike at instant speed. I'm just going to play... okay, so I see what I'm doing. I'm playing all the cards in my hand and discarding the Distortion Strike. Not 100% sure what happened here. Oh, I see. I needed to get cards into my graveyard for Uro, so I attempted to cast a sorcery at instant speed. That's not how that works. But I could still discard the card to the Sword of Feast and Famine trigger. So I would have discarded the Distortion Strike and then played the Mutagenic Growth during my turn, paying 2 life, putting the 5th card in my graveyard, allowing me to recast Uro from my graveyard and play a land. All right, so that's where we are. We've sort of corrected the game state. It didn't really matter, I don't think. It just another one of my many errors. This one largely was inconsequential, which is good. Poke the Batterskull at the guy. Yep. There's a Supreme Verdict in the second main phase after declaring an attack with the Batterskull and tapping all the lands, doing the thing. I'll sacrifice a Wooded Foothills here. Maybe getting... oh no, the Dryad Arbor's in the board. Probably. It's possible I should have got a Temple Garden there. There are white cards in my deck, and I have a blue source in the battlefield already. Start off the turn, draw, make a mana, sacrifice the Waterlogged Grove to run out a Noble Hierarch. It looks like it's a few basics and a Hallowed Fountain over there for Joe. Oh wow, there's a Stoneforge Mystic. Jeez. It feels like I'm super behind here. I mean, raw cards, I have 5. Joe has 9. Threats, I have 0. I don't exactly know how to count swords as threats. But as far as threats go, he at least has a Batterskull plus a Stoneforge Mystic. So end of turn here, I will pay the mana to pump his Stoneforge Mystic in response to the activation of the green-black sword. So I have 5 cards in my graveyard again for an Uro. I will exile everything in my graveyard again for an Uro. Here's a Mystic Sanctuary. That is a sad island. What is happening here? What are you doing? He is... okay, I see. Tapping 3 mana to cast the other sword in the hand. Untapping his land with the Sword of Feast and Famine. making me discard a card. I will discard Vines of Vastwood. Second main, equipping the sword back to the Stoneforge Mystic. Distortion Strike the Uro. Wow. Distortion Strike is incredible in this deck. I didn't think about it with the Uro. That's 8. That's gain 3, draw a card, deal your opponent 8, and next turn get to do it again, maybe? Yeah, we'll jam out a Spellskite here. At this point, it probably would have been correct to tap the Noble Hierarch. It's never blocking. That is a big Stoneforge Mystic. That is a Stoneforge Mystic with sort of Fire and Ice, sort of Feast of Famine, and Batterskull on it. So it's 9 power. So it's a 9-point life swing. Jeez. But good old Spellskite can get in the way of that particular truck and take a chump block for the team. So it buys us a draw step. The Distortion Strike goes back on the Uro. Joe's somewhere in the mid-20s here. I'm also somewhere in the mid-20s. There's a Pendelhaven. You can tell the game has gone horribly awry for the Infect player when I start playing my lands the way that I play them when I play control decks. This is not supposed to be a control deck. Although, Teferi would be pretty ridiculous right now. So we'll swing in with the Exalted Unblockable Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath to play an extra land for the turn, draw a card, gain the life, and then do 8 damage here. There's actually a chance if we have enough cards in the graveyard. Actually, maybe not. I'm thinking that this... oh, that's brutal. A Teferi off the top probably seals this up. It feels like it seals it up. Yeah, bouncing the Uro is a beating. But what this does is it gives me an opportunity to discard the Uro. So I'll discard the Uro, take the damage, because now I have Become Immense in my hand with Inkmoth Nexus, an Exalted trigger from the Noble Hierarch, and a Pendelhaven. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 points of damage right now. Sort of Fire and Ice goes after the Hierarch. Okay, so that's -1 point. Any pump spell wins it, I think. Oh no, he's got a grip. Look at that grip. Holy shoot. That's a mana leak. That's a shame. Yeah, he's got a full grip there. That's something else. Joe's just doing the rubbins. That was awesome. He had the mana leak and the path to exile. So yeah, that was a hell of a game. That went on for a while too. Multiple Uro activations, Become Immense exiling and being cast for 1 green. A potential last turn. If there were 0 interaction, that was a game-winning play. With oh man, that was an awesome game. I'm gonna rewatch that game, I think. Sideboarding here, going into game 3. I don't think much changes. I know I cut 2 Veils for 2 Nature's Claims. Getting the snot kicked out of me by a Stoneforge Mystic with every equipment in my deck might be triggering a bit of recency bias, but I'm not an analytics major, so I'm just going to bring in the thing that kills Batterskull. I'll be on the play here with a Might of Old Krosa, a Glistener Elf, Blighted Agent, Spell Pierce, Pendelhaven, Temple Garden, and a Breeding Pool. Joe's on Brazen Borrower, Teferi, Mana Leak, Deafening Silence, 2 Path to Exiles, and a Polluted Delta, which is definitely a fine one-lander. I will lead with Pendelhaven into Glistener Elf, Joe will lead Polluted Delta, sacrificing immediately for an untapped Hallowed Fountain, paying all the life, and casting a Deafening Silence. So he brings my turn 2 kill down to 0 here again, but I still think I would have preferred playing the Path to Exile against the tapped out Infect opponent with 1 threat. He doesn't know that I have another one in my hand, but it's neither here nor there. Generally, if I have a window to kill the Infector with very little chance of interaction, I take it. Especially on 1 mana, I feel like you want to play your impactful spells. So here comes a Glistener Elf for 3, thanks to a Mutagenic Growth. The land I played for the turn is Breeding Pool. Untapped, used both my mana sources to create a Blighted Agent. Joe's going to play a basic island. That means that he drew that basic island, I think. Either this turn or last. And pass the turn. I'll play a Temple Garden for my turn. And just rewinding for a bit, if he had played the path, he would have had another path to play here. So I will attack with both, pump with my Pendelhaven. Joe will path my Glistener Elf. I will Spell Pierce the path. If I have any other response, I may have preferred to use that. I would have rather used Blossoming Defense than Pierce, which makes me think I don't have Blossoming Defense or Vines. And Joe's just going to concede there. Yeah, he got clogged up on mana. Well, hey, that game 2 was awesome. Thanks, like, subscribe, and check out some more videos on the channel.